the starter, one of the most important parts of the sourdough bread baking process. So the real question is what is a starter and what is the importance of a starter in our final bread? Because if you don't have a good, strong starter that has the characteristics that you're looking for, you're never going to get a bread that has the characteristics that you're looking for. They are 100% related. So we're going to first talk a little bit about what is a starter. And at its most basic elements, a starter is just a mixture of flour and water. And somehow through this amazing process of fermentation, we're able to get this dough that doesn't have a lot of flavor. You probably wouldn't want to eat it if you just ate it raw. And we get it to turn into something that's really magical. Okay, and the way that we get to do this is through the magic of fermentation. And basically what fermentation is it's us giving successive feedings to certain types of bacteria and yeast to have a symbiotic relationship. Okay, and these bacteria and yeasts will colonize that starter, and then we are trying to control their relationship through controlling variables. So what variables can we control? Well, we can control things like time, we control things like temperature, we can control things like what we feed them. And so you might want to keep a journal handy that will allow you to keep track of some different things that you're going to test out, so that this way you find what works best for you and for the flavors that you're looking for. Okay, but a starter is necessary in order to create a leaven. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the difference between a starter and a leaven. Okay, so a starter is what we use to make a leaven. And that starter should have some strong smells to it. It should also be slightly acidic. And this is what we use to just kind of keep our colony going. The leaven really should be young and ripe when you go to use it, and it should have a little bit of a sweet smell. So the leaven, we don't typically let the leaven ferment as long as we would let a starter ferment for prior to feeding it, because that's what we're doing, right? We're taking a starter, we feed it, and then eventually we're going to take that starter to create a leaven. And usually when we feed the starter, we usually feed the starter after it's already risen and collapsed, whereas a leaven, we're trying to feed it and get it to a point where we are going to use it at its prime stage. Okay, and that's where it allows us to get some beautiful final characteristics that we can find inside our dough. And the characteristics that are within the leaven are going to lead to the same characteristics of your final bread. And so some characteristics that we're going to be looking for really are the flavors, right? And so the question is how can we control the flavor of the leaven, which is then going to kind of have some implications on the bread. And one of the most important factors really is storage. And part of the reason for this is that, again, we're talking about a symbiotic relationship between some bacteria and yeasts, and some bacteria and yeasts will thrive better in warmer environments, while some will thrive better in cooler environments. So in warmer environments, you're going to get a more acidic combination of bacteria and yeast. Whereas in a cooler climate, you're going to get a little bit of a less acidic flavor inside your yeast. So typically I like to keep my starter in the fridge because I like to have a little bit of a less acidic, and then what I'll do is I'll take that starter out of the fridge and then I'll use that to create my leaven. But if you're looking for a little bit more of an acidic flavor, you might want to store yours outside. You're going to have to feed it a lot more often, but you'll get more of the characteristics that you might be looking for inside your bread. But the most important role of the leaven is, one, to make sure that we're building the strength inside the bread, and two, to make sure that we're promoting the acidity that the bread is going to have, which gives it that beautifully distinctive flavor and smell. And again, that acidity actually also will help us store the bread for a longer period of time. So, your starter is a crucial part of the bread making process, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we can take care of that starter to create the best possible bread for you, your family, and your friends.